Critiquing Christian cinema, God's not dead. Welcome to our first movie review!
Yay!
Are you just as excited as I am that we can actually watch Christian movies and start to talk about them?
I know! We set this whole thing up. We even got a new microphone for you guys.
So, I left off in our introduction video that we were going to start off with God's Not Dead, and that's what we're going to do in this video. You can check out our backgrounds, get to know us a little bit better, our purpose, why we're doing this, the kinds of movies that we're talking about, things like that in our introduction video. There'll be a link to that in the description below or on the screen or wherever that might be, and you can check out the introduction video if you'd like to, just to understand a little bit more about us. Then you can hop right back to this actual movie review.
Yeah, so we just pretty much want to have a conversation about Christian films and stuff, pretty much anything that brings up Christianity or God or whatnot, and the film aspects of it.
And yeah.
So we're not going to necessarily discuss any of the like religious stuff that goes on in the movies and stuff.
I guess I'll go ahead and preface that since this is a very in-depth discussion and in-depth analyzing of the movies, we will go into spoilers. We will go into like the major plot points, the major character details. I mean, we're just going to talk about everything that we've watched in these movies. I mean, we prep for this by watching movies over and over and taking careful notes. So we just want to talk about it all. We want to analyze it all and just talk about everything that goes on in the movies. So we're going to talk about major plot points, character development, all those details. We're going to spoil all these movies through and through. Without further ado, God's Not Dead was directed by Harold Cronk, and it stars Kevin Sorbo, Shane Harper, David A.R. White, and Dean Cain. It also features appearances from Willie and Corey Robertson of the Duck Dynasty clan. And this movie also features an appearance of the Newsboys. And I might even say that this movie could even star the Newsboys. As like through and through God's Not Dead, there's all kinds of different Newsboys paraphernalia, and well, first spoiler.
It's a song.
And the first spoiler of this review, the whole movie leads up to a concert.
Oh.
It leads up to the Newsboys concert, and needless to say that the whole movie is named after one of their brand songs.
Okay.
Did I mention the Newsboys?
Yeah.
That the Newsboys are all over this movie?
Yeah. You'll find like t-shirts and posters.
There's t-shirts and posters.
Maybe even tattoos. Oh no, wait, we're
I don't think
Christians. We're not supposed to talk about that.
Oh, I don't think they have tattoos in this movie.
Shoot.
This movie was also produced by the Pureflix production company, which I think by the different movies that we've looked at and the patterns that they seem to be coming out with are very lighthearted and pure Christian movies.
So interestingly enough, the Reverend Dave, he's the white American Reverend.
David A.R. White is the founder of such company and acts.
He's the founder, and he will oftentimes be in the movies as like a side character and stuff. And he's in God's Not Dead 2.
And he's in this movie as Reverend Dave, and we'll go into his part of this movie later on in this review. The primary storyline in God's Not Dead is college freshman Josh Wheaton, not to be confused with the almighty creator of Firefly and Buffy the Vampire Slayer and director of Avengers, Joss Whedon. Josh Wheaton is a college freshman, pre-law.
Yes, it's
pre-law student.
It's the fall semester.
He's enrolling in a philosophy class with
Philosophy 158
with a professor Jeffrey Radisson, who's played by Kevin Sorbo. Radisson comes right into class and right off the bat talks about atheism, talks about what it's all about, how it means lacking a belief in God, and then he immediately begins with, okay, so we're just going to skip the debates, we're going to skip the discussion, just assert that there is no God. Obviously, I mean, any sophomore, I think the way that he puts it, would know there is no God, so we're just going going to decide right now that God is dead. And so he hands out slips of papers to each of his students for each of them to write the 3 words, God is dead, on them.
And to sign their name.
And so as Radisson is passing around the class, walking around the class, looking at the students and passing the slips of paper around, he comes across Josh, who is hesitant to do such a task because Josh claims to be a Christian and he refuses to write the phrase on the paper. And so Radisson, kind of surprised and kind of baffled by this reaction to get this Christian student in his class who doesn't want to write that, then challenges Josh to argue for the antithesis, to argue for God and to argue for proofs of God, and to stand up in front of the class and discuss proofs of God and to try to persuade Radisson over to believing in God. And if Josh fails to do this, then he fails the class. Ken, do you want to go into the other stories?
Okay, so there's a lot of
what else
subplots.
Happens?
I think that there's probably 5 or 6 different subplots.
There's like 2 primary stories,
okay,
and then like a couple of situations that branch off of that.
Yeah. So Professor Radisson has a girlfriend, and her name is Mina.
The professor met her in a class, and now they're hooked up.
The professor was the professor in her class,
and then she met him, and she met her when she was in his class.
Yeah. But you know, you can tell that she's like discontent, like about dating an atheist professor and stuff, and so that's bothering her. And then she has this brother, and I think he's a lawyer. And he's
a lawyer, businessman.
Marcus has this girlfriend named Amy Ryan, and Amy Ryan
is a blogger, and she's a reporter, and she's one of the first subplots that's shown in the movie. One of the first scenes with her, she interviews the Robertsons, and she talks to them outside of their church and questions them about their faith in God, questions them about their active lifestyle with hunting, which, you know, as they all like to do.
So she ends up getting cancer, and she tells Marcus, they go out to a really fancy dinner. He just made the law group that he was associated with as one of the associates, you know, the main people in it. And he was really excited, but she just found out she had cancer, and they actually ended that relationship.
He ended that relationship.
Yeah, he ended that relationship.
He treats the whole relationship as a business agreement, as a business arrangement, and she's just trying to get personal because something just dropped on her lap.
Yeah. So another subplot is there's this Muslim girl who goes to the university. Her name is Aisha, and you kind of see her interactions, how her father wants to make her wear the headdress that
the veil
traditional Muslims will wear and stuff. But she usually takes it off when she, like, you know, turns around the corner. And she overhears Josh in a conversation about this discussion that he's having class. What ends up happening with her is that her family finds out that she's a Christian, and her father ends up kicking her out.
It's when her father finds out that she's listening to this Bible podcast type thing that's on her iPod. She gets caught for it, and the father forces her out of the room, beats her down, and drives her out of the house and locks her out.
Yeah.
And excommunication from the house because she's now a Christian, or she has been a Christian, and her father finds out about that.
Yeah. Another subplot would be the reverends.
There's another subplot with a couple of reverends, Dave and Jude, who are they're traveling, and they're
to like Disney World.
Literally, their entire subplots
like 12 hours away
revolves around them trying to find the right rental car, because every time they try one, it doesn't start.
Yeah.
And I mean, in the middle of their journey, Josh comes to Reverend Dave for advice for talking with his professor, and so Dave gives him some Bible verses, some counsel. Otherwise, Reverend Dave and Jude are just trying to start their cars.
Yeah.
Until much later on in the movie, when they arrive at pretty much their last car of the night, Jude's like, hey, we should just pray for this. We just have faith that the car will start. So they pray, they get in the car, miraculously the car starts.
Hey! Reverend Dave also has some like conversations with some of the other characters. He has a conversation with Mina over her relationship with Professor Radisson.
So we've got the subplots with Amy. She's cynical, she's a reporter, she's a blogger, she gets cancer, she seeks prayer from the newsboys backstage in the concert. Then we have, of course, Radisson and his relationship with Mina, and that they break it off. And then Radisson, so I guess just to stem...
And Aisha,
and to stem back to the primary storyline with Josh and Radisson. So Josh keeps discussing God, and basically no matter what Josh tries to talk about in class, Radisson is still like, that's all you got, there's nothing better that you can do, things like that, until it gets practically to the boiling point, like the climax of the film, when Josh starts to confront like the ultimate why Radisson doesn't believe in God, or why atheists don't believe in God, and then Josh decides, wait, do you hate God? Do you actually hate God, Radisson? No, here's a better question. Why do you hate God? And so he questions Radisson over and over, and Radisson's just trying to turn his back against him. Why do you hate God? And then Radisson finally has his breaking point with, because he took everything away from me. Yes, I hate God.
Yes, I hate God. All I have for him is hate.
Supposedly, like when he was 12 years old, his mother died from cancer, and it really shook him and stuff. And he was like, "Why?" It's one of those questions.
Why would God take this person?
Yeah,
from me?
why would God kill my mother off and stuff? Now his mother was a Christian, and
that's right.
One thing that you do see in the end, you see Radisson. He's flipping through all these pages of students saying God is
looking
dead,
through the God is dead
and
papers,
then he pulls out a letter from his mother, and it's pretty much kind of saying like, I wish the best for your life, I love you, I pray for you, I hope that I can look down upon you and stuff, and you kind of see some character development.
I mean you see a little bit of a change there. Yeah. Then he just scans over his desk, and then newsboys once again. He sees the newspaper with a little newsboys ad, like they're having a concert there, and then he strolls the streets, presumably toward the concert. So he strolls the streets where the whole concert is going on.
I'm assuming that he's finding Mina.
Is it?
Because they're broken up. He lost the debate with Josh. He's wondering why all these students wrote God is dead, but they all agreed with Josh in the debating. He's reading his mother's letter, and I think he's going to Mina. And they go to the Newsboys concert.
They go to the Newsboys concert and have a good time. Then Willie appears on that big electronic screen in the concert and says, "Text everybody, God's not dead." And the whole movie ends on everybody texting everybody, "No, God's not dead." And we kind of cut to the different people that the people in the concert are texting to. We see Martin's dad, who Martin was texting to throughout the film. Hey, what about God? Have you considered this about God? Texting his father, and then Martin in the concert texts his dad, "Hey, God's not dead." Then we see other people's reactions to those texts, and so the whole movie practically ends on God's not dead.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get on with reviews. We have some reviews from IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes. Interestingly enough, on Rotten Tomatoes, it says that the top critics rated it as 15% likes and stuff, so it was vomit. Well, the audience voted for 77%.
As a Rotten Tomato, as a ripe tomato. So so this movie came out in 2014, I believe, a couple of years ago, and it was pretty big. It was quite successful. I'm not sure about popular, but probably popular depending on which crowd or which kind of promotion you look at. But it got a lot of people's attention. A lot of the Christian crowd loved it. They were into it. They saw the movie all the time. And this also goes back to when we were talking in the introduction how Christian movies tend to split the crowd, tend to split the audience. The Christians are all into the movies, and the secular crowd can't stand the movies at all. And this was a prime example of all my Christian friends loved God's Not Dead. All my secular friends hated it.
Yeah, yeah. So I have some reviews from IMDb.
So what did some people say?
I have some mixed reviews. This reviewer says, I'm a Christian pastor, and I didn't really appreciate the efforts of the filmmakers and stuff. But honestly, he says that it's more propaganda than art. He defines that art is a powerful but subtle tool that draws people in and causes them to question their assumptions without even realizing it. However, propaganda is a blunt force instrument for communicating dogma in a story form. And that's...
I heard propaganda twice.
Yeah. Yep. So, that's propaganda.
That's what one guy thought of it.
Yeah. Another guy, he's a Catholic man. He's a devout Catholic man. And he's honestly, like, mixed opinions. He does say that it's generally bad, but he says... the faithful, including me, will definitely find some enlightenment. There was an uplifting musical moment in the end of the film where all the plots come together, and that reminds me of why I am a Christian in the first place.
Interesting.
So while he thinks that it's kind of like a bad production, he does find like a lot of enlightenment and encouragement in this film and stuff through it all. And so my third reviewer, she says, or he, I can't remember who, but they're just saying, like, there's so many great messages in the story. I can't. I'm like, it's amazing.
It's so
my mind
important.
was blown. It's kind of what they're saying. And stuff. Yeah, so many great messages from each person that was highlighted in this movie, from the Muslim girl to the student, even the Christian girlfriend.
Yeah.
Yeah, she also loved the old lady. Yeah, so
Who doesn't?
I know. I love them. Okay.
So that's what IMDb had to say?
Yes. 3 different reviewers.
Yeah, I found 3 different reviews as well from Rotten Tomatoes. Rotten Tomatoes is a little bit more interesting and just as precise with the reviews. Let's see, a couple of reviews, probably just from a non-biased reviewer. Headline being, even by the rather lax standards of the Christian film industry, God's Not Dead is a disaster. And I just kind of paraphrased the whole reviews. The most worthwhile moments of God's Not Dead come from Kevin Sorbo, of all people, who plays the film's mustache twirler of a villain, Professor Radisson. Director Harold Kronk has absolutely no idea how to frame shots or pace scenes, and I have something to say about that later on, and too many of them stretch on interminably and indifferently. Christian films are often done in by their need to follow a literal come-to-Jesus storyline. Then I have another review that's very similar to it. This is awful filmmaking, from trite writing of one-dimensional characters to even triter written dialogue. And paraphrased again, nobody should mistake comfortable recognition of content with good filmmaking. Music swelling to a crescendo to signify the uplifting importance of words or actions is a great cinema trope. In other words, just something that's dropped into the movie for the sake of like the genre or the story. I think is what they mean. So the filmmakers use it in every scene, and they're talking about the soundtrack, how it's just the one uniform kind of sound. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, but I know exactly what they're talking about.
Okay.
And then one more review that comes from Christian, but also still a little bit skeptical. Clunky in spots? Yes. Preachy throughout? Lord, yes. Compelling to those who know what they're paying for? Without a doubt. While the people who made God's Not Dead clearly have a strong faith in God, I do wish they had a bit more faith in their characters and their story here. The flick then becomes a protracted concert film at the point when all concerned should really be rolling the end credits, confident that they've delivered the message. A better climax would have had all the players finding their way to Pastor Dave's Sunday sermon, not to the Newsboys sold-out arena show. Nevertheless, there is an earnestness to the film that appealed to me. I actually wish more spirituality would find its way into mainstream Hollywood films and TV series, not because I'm a Christian, but I just want to push my beliefs through popular art. So basically our reviews are like part skeptical in recognizing the storylines and how they kind of fall apart and how the characters aren't quite well written. But those are some of the main points that we especially found online. Yeah. So what do we think about it?
Yeah, what was your first impression?
What was my first impression? Well, the more that Jessica kept talking about, within this review and before this review, as you talked about more things that you noticed about the movie, and more things that you learned about, it's like, oh, I didn't notice that. Oh, I didn't notice that either. Oh, wait, so this character was related to this character, and this other thing happened, and
yeah, it's all kind of confusing.
This movie was too much of just about everything, but it wasn't enough of a lot of things. I mean, there were very confusing relationships, the names were very confusing, a lot of confusing characters, just so many different things going on, so many different stories going on, and I can totally feel that with just the broad agenda that these Christian filmmakers are bringing into it, how God is totally present, totally in existence, and totally pertinent to all these people's lives, and here are many different situations and many different lives that people have that God is completely relevant to. It's still forcing way too much into one movie. We do have that one interesting storyline between Radisson and Josh, kind of conflicting against each other in their beliefs. That's a very interesting part. Unfortunately, it's still drowned down by the multiple storylines, and the movie is kind of clunky with introducing its characters and just trying to throw them in one at a time with, okay, introduce this guy, introduce this guy, and this guy.
It's kind of confusing because, like, in the beginning, like, you show, like, all the characters all at once. Like,
it shows them all at once, it intercuts in between them all at once.
My impression was that it's like a message that's trying to be pushed down your throat and stuff. So it's very much propaganda-y, and
Yes.
like I think that's one thing that I dislike about like the subplots and stuff, is that the subplots have nothing to do with the main plot, and
They converge loosely toward the end of the movie, but that's it.
Well, the subplots, I mean, it seems like a bunch of fat guys around a table saying, that's a good idea, we should put it in!
Well, this movie did have three or four different writers, so that absolutely shows with the different kinds of storylines. I don't know how well they worked together, or if they were just...
I don't think that's uncommon to have multiple writers.
I'm not saying it's not. I mean, it's totally common to have multiple story writers. I'm just saying, like, that might have showed or might have contributed to. Well, I don't know. Maybe it wasn't the weakness. Maybe it wasn't what contributed to different storylines. But I kind of felt, well, maybe that was a route to story.
Yeah.
There.
Okay.
But,
so, what do you like about the movie?
It was well photographed. It did look like a nice movie. It was professionally shot. It looked very nice, professional, well, evenly lit.
It wasn't cheesy.
It wasn't terribly cheesy. The visual weren't cheesy.
B-movie.
There was care given to. There was care given to the visuals, there was care given to the photography, and I can clearly tell that there was some effort and there was quality put into it. It was a watchable movie. I can only watch it like 2 or 3 times, so it was a watchable movie. There's one particular scene when Mark is taunting his mom, the lady with the lady with the dementia. The scene is at night, and we have Mark kind of on the side. He's just sitting on the step, and he's talking directly to the lady with, "Why would God allow this to happen to you? Why would God allow this disease, this illness to seep into your brain?" He's sitting aside, and then the lady is just sitting in her chair, just kind of in awe. She's innocent, just this dark night shadow washing over the whole scene. The lady is in this blue moon light is on her, and then Mark has like this streak. It's kind of like a streak going across his body of the moonlight, and just the dark all across him. Just the whole scene, the whole shot is just shadowed, washed, except for some streaks of light, some streaks of moonlight, and just this dark and dank and helpless kind of scene that's illustrated with the lighting, and just the way that it's shot from like the side of Mark's way in the distance. He's out of focus. He's there. He's talking, and the lady's just sitting there innocently and almost kind of hopeless, but then the camera just holds above her, and she's professing her faith for God, and it's just this really nicely visually illustrated kind of taunting and testing of the faith moment.
Yeah. One thing that I really liked was that the actors, what's his name? Shane Harper and Kevin Sorbo.
The student and the professor?
The student and the professor, yeah. They did a really good job at creating this, like, tense moment.
Their chemistry and their relationship was really good. It was really intense. Anytime they were in the classroom together, anytime they were just together within distance in the hallway or within just earshot of each other, it was intense and it was drama. Like, I could feel it.
Yeah. I think that you could especially, like, feel it when you were, like, I think it was the third and final lecture that Josh had to do, and he's like entering into this elevator, and it's like, oh my gosh, the professor's in here, and he kind of like gingerly walks in and then turns around and presses the button and kind of like looks down, and you like as an audience member, you feel this like tense situation, like my stomach is turning.
So the antagonist and the protagonist relationship, the most important aspect of the movie and the most important aspect of the story was done quite well. I liked and I understood and I bought the relationship. I bought just the sheer conflict and the sheer strong atheist but devout Christian. One side is very devout to knocking the other side over, and that was very well intensified. There should be room for jokes. There should be room for little funny moments. Yes. And there was a funny moment when Josh is researching more about God, researching more about his existence in the library, checking out books, and he brings those books out to the checkout desk, and a girl's at that desk from his classroom.
Yeah.
I suppose he drops the books down, and the girl probably has experience with this and says, "Oh, you've got to be kidding me." And Josh
says,
"Do you have a life?" And Josh says, "Yeah, tell me about it." And she goes ahead and stamps the books.
Yeah,
just really a few lines, and it's performance driven, it's visually driven. You know what they're doing, you know what Josh is up to, what they're both thinking, like, oh, he's at it again, and it was stamped well, and it was
literally stamped
well.
It was literally stamped well.
One little thing I liked about the editing, I'll talk a little bit more about the editing later on. There was one edit that was like a nice wink.
You call
to...
it a J cut,
So,
don't you?
so there's a moment when just after Dave and Jude are first introduced, they're just exchanging to each other. Jude says, "God is good all the time," and all the time Dave responds, "God is good." And then we hear "God is dead," spoken by Radisson, and we hear that audio said in what's the next shot of the scene, Radisson passing out the slips of paper to his students.
So it's like the sound kind of overlapping in the scene.
We see the scene of Jude and Dave, then we hear the sound of the next shot before we even see it.
God is good.
All the time.
And all the time,
God is good.
God is dead.
In editing terms, this is called a J cut, and
Yeah.
it gets this term from what the footage looks like in the editing program. But it's a J cut, and we see Dave say, "God is good." Then we hear the professor's voice, "God is dead," as a cut to that line, like "God is good," said optimistically, "God is dead," said by the professors. That was kind of a clever edit that they threw in there. Okay, so those were some of the things that we liked.
One of the main reasons why we are doing this video series is because we want to talk about the weaknesses
What didn't
of
quite
the
work well? What was weak
Yeah.
about the movie? Do we want to go back to the subplots as the primary weakness of the movie?
Yeah. So, one thing that I was thinking about when I was, thinking about this movie was, The Lord of the Rings. You get to the third movie, you're kind of you have these subplots, and you're like, where did they all come from? And you have to think to yourself, oh yeah, they came from when Frodo and Sam were in,
the Shire?
The Shire scene and stuff. All of the subplots in the movie, they split apart through circumstances, but they all have one goal, and they all have one direction.
Their own goals, their own directions.
Well, yeah. Well, each subplot develops its own goal, but its primary goal is the same. In contrast to the subplots in God's Not Dead, they're kind of really loosey-goosey.
This movie in particular doesn't take the time to really introduce these characters and really introduce what they're all about, what their lives are all about, what they were doing, before the movie starts and things like that. And it's feeding its own big, broad agenda of each character is going to find Jesus in their own individual way.
Yeah, exactly. So, overall, I think that one of the biggest weaknesses is that there's so many subplots.
There's too much going on.
Theoretically, you should be able to know what the character is doing at any given time and stuff, because it's a journey with the characters. And actually, if you look at the reviews, this is a very common complaint. People say that all of the Christians, except for maybe the girlfriend, but most of the Christians are portrayed as being good, as being, generous, as being helpful and kind, and then everyone else who's not a Christian is portrayed as being mean,
bad, abusive.
People have been calling the Muslim father as abusive. The atheist professor is just a jerk.
The most consistent reviews and complaints that I kept seeing for this movie is extremely stereotypical and kind of one-sided, as it's showing the Christians are the good guys and the atheists are bashing over the head as there is no God, get that through your head, you can't prove there is no God.
Yeah.
And it's showing, like you said, it's showing him as a jerk. And it shows him as imposing his atheistic point of views on the classroom, and that, there is no God, this is a philosophy class, that's what we're going to believe. And it's definitely stereotypical with the Muslim family, too. The supporting characters are just kind of tossed into the movie, they're just kind of dropped into the movie along with their stories, along with their journey, and we're just expected to follow with them, to track with them in their character journeys throughout the story, and feel for them whenever cancer hits them, or cancer took your mother, or their car won't start, whatever it is. The movie glossed over the beginnings of these characters a little bit too quickly. It just kind of dropped them in, and here we go. Editing was choppy. It definitely contributed to the confusing subplots and to the confusing character introductions. It would cut in the middle of scenes, and it would cut in the middle of moments.
Choppy.
Just definitely mixed up scenes, and definitely mix of jump from scene to scene to scene to scene to scene, which really led to my confusion and led to, okay, where are we now? Okay, what story is this now? So the editing is really important for multiple characters and multiple stories, and it didn't hold this movie up that well.
Yeah, it definitely was choppy. You feel like that you left off at one particular scene. When you picked back up with that character,
It's 10 minutes later.
Well, yeah, but it's at you don't exactly know what's going on. You're like, what's happening?
Yeah, exactly.
Last time I saw you, you were like in the library.
You were over there. Now you're here. What did you do in between? So the movie leaves a little bit too much to assume in between. And just a quick note on the soundtrack again. I like the song with the introduction to the Robertsons. Otherwise, it's just one uniform kind of hallmarky, cheesy, orchestral drama sound.
Like, the soundtrack is really the one thing that kind of makes it, like, hallmarky and stuff. Because a lot of the movies that we're viewing, like A Matter of Faith, a lot of it is piano music and stuff. A lot of it will try to set the tone for you.
It will kind of drop in tone for the drama.
Yeah, for the drama.
Very briefly. So
I think that's all we have for you.
So really, all in all, I feel like this movie was just too much, too soon. Well, too much, but still not enough, but too much at the same time. I'm still... The whole movie is still in pieces in my head. I watched this 3 times. I watched it the 3rd time just to get a few extra notes, but my mind was gone at the end of it. I can't watch this movie.
So we did agree that this movie was worth like 1 to 2 views.
It's worth maybe 1 or 2 views, but that's pretty much it. If you want to look into it yourself, that's good for you. But I really don't think this was. Besides the effective acting with our 2 main characters was done effectively. It was well shot and looked nice and had some nice edits or some nice humorous moments thrown into it as well. The rest of the movie just kind of falls flat. And it doesn't hold itself up that well as a movie and as an artistic expression piece.
We don't want to take away this movie from your enjoyment and stuff. So
if you like this movie, that's fair.
Yeah.
It's totally fair.
Yeah. Argue against us. Tell us why you liked it. Tell us why you didn't like it. Join in on the conversation with us about how, we can improve Christian filmmaking.
But just on that final note of the rest of the movie just doesn't hold up that well, and I can't watch it that many times. I would grade this movie with a D.
Yes. I would agree. So thank you for watching this movie.
That concludes our review for God's Not Dead. And I guess we'll come back to you next time with another review. Thanks for watching, guys.
Thank you.
See you next time.
Bye.